In Mesilas Yesharim, the Ramchal writes, and this is towards the very end, that since a human being is made of flesh and blood, he can never, on his own, reach holiness that is separate from the physical world. Rather, man must first acquire constant connection with Hashem, and then the final stage of holiness is awarded to him as a gift. Such a holy person's physical actions, like eating and drinking, become acts of holiness, just as the eating of sacrificial foods is in itself a mitzvah. Okay, so this at the very end of Mesilas Yesharim, he talks about the highest level that a person can reach, and he talks about how a person in the highest state can turn seemingly mundane physical activity into spiritual fulfillment. Just like we know that on Shabbos, simply enjoying yourself physically is a tremendous mitzvah. It is a mitzvah that has reward beyond our wildest imagination. And what are we doing? We're enjoying ourselves. We're eating, we're drinking, we're sleeping, we're learning, we're doing things that would otherwise seem to be selfish, and yet this is a fulfillment of one of the greatest mitzvahs. So how does that work? What happens is that Hashem says, this is what your neshama needs to develop. So if you do this, that will be its growth. So when a person fully, really thoroughly understands that, they'll be able to find that in everything that they have to do in life. Every bite that they eat, they will understand, why does Hashem need me to do this? Every minute that they sleep, they will be able to find the fulfillment of the will of Hashem. That'll be good for business, right? So if a person is able to focus that way and live a life like that, then it's like eating a korban. Eating a korban for a kohen is a tremendous mitzvah. The person who brings a sin offering gets his atonement when the kohen eats the meat of his offering. How does that work? The answer is because the Kohanim were on such a high level that their eating was 100% l'shem shemayim, for the sake of Hashem. They're doing it purely for the mitzvah's sake. And when you do that, you elevate it. It's a fulfillment of a mitzvah. It's not an act of animalistic eating. It's a spiritual act of a fulfillment of a mitzvah. And this, in my understanding, I don't know if this is true, I'm not Hasidish, but in my understanding, this is a concept that the Hasidim have called shirayim. The concept of shirayim is that the Rebbe would eat a little piece of something, and then all the other Hasidim would try to get a little piece of whatever was left from what he didn't eat. So the Rebbe's Friday night, they would have a tish, which is when all the Hasidim would come together, and the Rebbe would have his Shabbos meal, and he'd have, potentially thousands of Hasidim there. And he'd take a little bite of the challah, they'd make this tremendous challah, he'd take a little bite of it, and then the rest of it would get spread around, and hundreds of people would take a piece. What's the point? And they're very into it. It's a big deal for them. Why? What's the significance? So it could be, based on this Mesilas Yesharim, it's because when the Rebbe eats, it's like a korban. It's like eating an offering. And therefore, what's left of it is eating what's left of a korban. And there's tremendous holiness connected to eating a korban. Only Kohanim can do it, but this is not an actual korban. So the rest of us are able to eat it also. But we are taking a piece of the leftovers of a korban. Because when the Rebbe ate from it, it became a korban. That's the idea that he's saying over here. So I don't know that that's necessarily the rationale, but to me, I think that's what it is. Okay, so the goal here is, as he's saying, to make sure that we don't let go of the reins, because a person is always battling. Their entire lives, they're gonna always have a battle between the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov. It's always going to be a battle between their physical desires and their spiritual desires. And it's up to you. We have free will, always. We have choices to make. And we always can make the right choice. So you have to rein it. You have to hold those reins and stay in control. I forget who it was. One of the great sages of, I don't remember if it was the previous generation or the one before. I don't remember exactly who it was. It may have been Rav Shimon Shkapa, I don't remember for certain. But he had fractured something in his arm. And the doctor said, you have to put him in a cast, and this and that. And he said, he needs to do this, and it's going to take a lot of time. And so the rabbi said, Is there any other way? I really don't want to lose all that time. So he said, well, you have to keep your arm perfectly straight, or perfectly bent, whatever it was. And he said, okay, so I'll do that. He said, no, but you have involuntary movement. He's like, no, I'm in charge of my body. My body's not in charge of me. And that's what he did. He didn't get casted, and it healed perfectly because he was in charge. I am in charge of my body. My body's not in charge of me. Someone who's on that level holds the reins. When you're on that extremely high level, you are in charge. You hold the reins. You tell your body what to do, not the other way around. So that's what we're talking about over here. We're talking about reaching a level in which the intellect, it's the product of the neshama, is the guiding force in our lives. And if we allow that to work, and we strengthen it, and we learn it, we understand it, we make it who we are, and then we make it what we do, then we'll be able to reach this tremendously high level in which our Yetzer Tov is the driving force, and the Yetzer Hara is very much in the background. All right, it's been a pleasure. Thank you all for coming, and I'll be gone for a couple of days, but we'll be back for next week. I'll be back later this week. All right, have a good one. Stay warm.